Hello and welcome to another session of Karen's Colours. I'm Dr. Karen and these are my colour conversations. In this session, I'll be looking at another film. It's a comedy. It's also a crime thriller of sorts. But before I begin, I'd like to welcome those of you who have been watching these films. I hope you've been enjoying the information that I've been presenting to you as a colour analysis. If you're new here, you're also welcome, and please invite yourself to settle down, relax, and enjoy yet another colour analysis of a film. If you like what you see, you might like to subscribe, but either way, it's a free ride for you. So let's get into it. This film is a collaboration, in fact, it's the third collaboration between Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder, a couple of comic geniuses that really worked together well. They did 4 films in total, and the first one, of course, was their most popular, and they gradually reduced in popularity. And that is why this particular film had some mixed to negative reviews from the critics, but was acclaimed by the people who actually went to see the film. The film is See No Evil, Hear No Evil. And the critics had a lot to say. And one critic actually said about it that even a brilliant comedy duo can team up for an unfunny dud. Well, the audience had a totally different view. One person said that a great comedy from a stupid concept. It's not meant to be sophisticated. Critics of this movie are people that take themselves far too seriously. Another audience member said that it provides an empowering and positive attitude towards disability. And I dare say if you watch the film itself, you might get that same impression. Either way, the film was a financial success. It retained its #1 position for 2 weeks after its release, which is a pretty good effort for a comedy. To begin with, let me introduce the characters. There are 8 primary characters that make up this film. The first one that we see is Dave Lyons. He's a deaf man. Wally Carew is a blind man. Braddock and Gatlin are the police officers who interrogate both Wally and Dave for the crime that they are accused of. Eve and Kurgo are the assassins that actually created the murder and chase Wally and Dave throughout the film. Adele is Wally's long-suffering sister, and Sutherland is the crime boss who, at the end of the film, we discover is also a blind man. Let's now take us into the plot. Now, as before, the plot is rather a complicated issue, and I'm only going to skirt around some of the elements. If you want to see the full calamity in production, you'll need to have a look at the film itself. But let's begin with Dave. He runs a news kiosk in New York City. Wally manages to get a job working for Dave, and despite their initial confusion and antagonism, they bond as a team. Wally knocks out a bully at a local bar with instructions from Dave. Remembering that Wally can't see, Dave, however, can see, can't hear, but is able to verbalize instructions to Wally. Wally has a gambling habit, and his bookie comes into the kiosk and leaves a special coin in the tray to hide it from the assassin who is entering behind him, and that assassin is Eve. Eve shoots the bookie, killing him. Dave doesn't hear the shot, but is able to see her legs as she leaves the kiosk. Wally hears the shot, and he recognizes her perfume as she walks past, but he doesn't see the crime. Coming in to investigate the noise, Wally falls over the body. Dave finds and handles the gun, and both find themselves arrested. They are interrogated by the police, but cannot convince the police of their innocence because this story doesn't seem to hold water. Eve and her partner Kurgo pose as attorneys in order to try and bail both Wally and Dave out because they are convinced that these two know the whereabouts of the coin. Wally and Dave recognize Eve's smell and her legs, and although they can't convince the police that she is the killer, they manage to make their escape from the station, and Wally has the coin in his pocket because he emptied the coin tray earlier on, but he doesn't know this. Eva, on the other hand, is able to retrieve it. Wally and Dave are able to escape from both these criminals by combining their fight skills. They also manage to steal a police car and evade pursuit. Eve chases them in her red car, while Kurgo hails a taxi, steals it, and also enters the chase. Eventually, they manage to escape and contact Wally's sister Adele, who then helps them to evade the police, who have put a tail on Adele. Dave had read Eve's lips earlier and discovered that they were heading to a place that Adele was able to identify, and so they track the criminals to a resort. There, Adele distracts Kurgo with a car crash that she makes deliberately, and Dave is able to steal the coin back from Eve. In the meantime, Wally is mistaken for a medical expert and taken down to a conference room from which he is extricated by Dave. Down in the car park, Eve and Kurgo capture Adele and take her to Sutherland, the boss's estate. Now here she is tied up and left in a greenhouse, and they await the arrival of Wally and Dave. Dave is able to rescue her and she escapes, but Kurgo manages to track down Wally, who is distracting the Doberman dogs in the picture behind me, and manages to capture Wally. Eve, on the other hand, captures Dave. In Sutherland's office, Kurgo gets greedy when he realizes the value of the coin, and Sutherland shoots him. Discovering now that Sutherland is blind, both Wally and Sutherland have a blind shootout, both of them missing their targets. Eve brings Dave to Sutherland's office and, discovering Kurgo's dead body, makes inquiries and then shoots Sutherland. She then attempts to escape via a waiting helicopter, and Dave and Wally zipline down towards the helicopter in pursuit. At this stage, Adele arrives with the police, and after all of the arrests that are made, Dave and Wally reprise an act of making themselves objects of ridicule that had occurred also earlier in the film. So let's now get into the character colours, but before we do so, there are some issues with the colour analysis of this film. Comedies usually have multiple coloured costumes for the people who are the lead characters, but this film actually has very few colour changes. In fact, the colour adheres mainly to the other characters and to the objects with which they interact. The male colours for the actors involve putting on or removing an item of clothing, and this is the main feature of the costume changes for both Wally and Dave. The female characters wear more colourful costumes, but even they do not have a great variety of costume changes. Wally, being a blind person, is more colourfully dressed than Dave. So let's quickly summarise the colours for each of the main characters. Dave's colours, firstly, he is seen initially wearing blue and grey. He employs Wally in black and blue. After the bar fight, they bond together with him wearing grey and black. And after the murder, he is seen in blue and grey. He adds a blue jacket to his costume in which he is arrested. He rescues Wally from the conference with the addition of a red tie to his blue and otherwise grey costume. He plans Adele's rescue in that same costume, and after the escapade at the end of the film, he and Wally enjoy some ice cream while he is dressed entirely in grey. Turning now to Wally's colours. We meet Wally first wearing blue, orange, brown, and grey. Now, in this costume, he is in the company of his sister Adele. He goes for an interview for employment with Dave wearing black, green, white, and grey. He fights the bar bully wearing black and green. Just prior to the murder, he is wearing blue, brown, and a black and white apron. After the arrest, he's also donned an additional jacket, so now he's primarily in brown and black. Wearing that same jacket, but now it looks more yellow than brown, he is mistaken for an expert at the resort and taken to the conference room. And after the escapade is over and they are free men again, he's seen wearing red and grey. Eve's colours are the brightest of all of the people in the film. She murders the bookie wearing bright red. In her disguise as an attorney for Wally and Dave, she wears white, grey, and red. There is white soap that covers her face in the scene in the shower, and after she's finished her shower, she wears a white towel, and in this she confronts Dave, who has been stealing back the coin. She puts on a white and blue robe to help capture Adele, and finally at Sutherland's, she is in green, white, and black. Her compatriot Kurgo has fewer scenes and also has fewer colours. He's first seen in grey and black as he is discussing with Eve what they are going to do about collecting the coin. In his attorney disguise, he's wearing grey, white, and brown. When he inspects the coin, he's in grey and brown, and it's in these colours that he is killed. Wally's sister Adele also wears different colours, but they are less bright than those worn by Eve. When we first see her, she's escorting Wally to the railway station, and she's wearing purple and grey. When she's alerted to the men's escape from prison, she's wearing pink and white. She wears that same pink and white costume with the addition of a pink jacket when she's distracting the clerk at the resort so that Wally and Dave are able to find information as to how they can get rooms in that resort. When she's distracting Kurgo after the car crash, she's wearing grey and black, and she continues in that same costume for the remainder of the film. The crime boss Sutherland has very few scenes, and we don't see a great deal of colour from him at all. When we first meet him, we see him from behind, and he's wearing primarily black with just a touch of white. At his estate, when he kills Kurgo and also attempts to kill both Wally and Eve, he's wearing red, black, and grey. And finally, we have the detectives. They wear grey and brown throughout the film in various different assortments of costumes, but they also use a red loudhailer as a prop within the film when they're trying to recapture Wally and Dave. So let's now analyse the colours themselves. Grey is basically a uniform. It demonstrates the ordinariness of the protagonists. Dave's lacklustre life, Wally's acceptance of his disability as the film progresses, Eve's pretense at a legal expertise, Kurgo's following of orders, Adele's adherence to norms, in which she tries to insist that Wally behaves as a blind man should, Sutherland's vulnerability as well, because he can't see his assailants, and the detectives in their grey uniforms don't display any great brilliance. So grey is something to do with a lack of any sort of brilliance or genius. Black encourages stability. When Dave is managing his business, he has a great deal of black in his costume. When he's bonding with Wally, he also wears black. Wally gets and retains a job wearing black trousers, and when they are arrested and escape, black is prominent in their costumes. Eve is the only character that does not wear black in any part of her costumes, although her hair is coloured black. Kurgo, as the strong man to Eve's leadership, also wears black. Adele's black collar keeps Kurgo distracted, and Sutherland's facade of dominance is all associated with black. Now, how these encourage stability is that they are trying to maintain whatever the status quo is at the time when they are enacting their particular scenes. White, on the other hand, shows risk-taking. Dave doesn't wear white at all, and of course he would be rather risk-adverse because of his experiences as a deaf man. Wally wears white for his job hunting, which is a risky endeavour for him. Eve faces the danger of Dave's potential shooting of her wearing white. Kurgo's white is a distraction from his true intent. Adele awaits news from Wally wearing a white skirt and also takes the risk of distracting the desk clerk to allow the men to execute an entry plan to the resort. Sutherland also does not wear white as such, although there is a touch of it in his shirt shown from his rear view. All of these are risks that the characters take in undertaking whatever activity they are expected to do for the film. Blue denotes escape planning. Dave uses his skills to outwit his opponents wearing blue. Wally's hat denotes a fair degree of cunning. The villains do not wear blue, and neither does Adele. The detectives also don't wear blue, but the police officers are clad in blue as they try to prevent escapes. In fact, that is an indicator of their planning to prevent the escapes that actually do occur. Red establishes control. Dave's tie dominates the conference as he rescues Wally from his torturous experience in front of a room full of delegates. Wally overcomes his disability denial at the end of the film, also wearing red. Eve kills the bookie wearing red, and she gives Kurgo his instructions in that same colour, and as well, of course, she drives a red car. Adele is not seen in red, but Sutherland does overcome Kurgo's threats to his dominance by shooting him whilst also wearing a red jacket. All of these situations, excluding, of course, Adele, are ones in which red is showing an ability to dominate a particular situation. Green is opportunism. Dave doesn't wear green, but Wally applies for his job wearing green and expects to make advantage of that job. Eve's green denotes action in order to escape from a very perilous situation, and Kurgo, Adele and Sutherland don't wear green either. So we've only got two instances in which we can see green appearing when an opportunity is taken for a new life. Brown, which also appears quite frequently, shows resistance to a situation. Wally's refusal to accept his blindness is denoted in the brown that he wears, and when he argues against his arrest, he's also wearing a good deal of brown. Kurgo, when he examines the coin and discovers its disguise, is wearing brown, and it's in this costume that he demands more money from Sutherland. The detectives, wearing a greyish-brown, also denote a certain amount of stubbornness. So in each of these situations, the resistance is to whatever is happening in the real world for the particular characters at the time. Yellow demonstrates a fair degree of confusion, and it adheres almost exclusively to Wally. Wally's letting go of the ladder during Dave's surveillance of the villains is an example of confused thinking. Wally's losing of his room key is a distraction that allows him to gain access to the room that is occupied by the villains. And when he is mistaken as a medical expert speaker, he also shows a fair degree of confusion, particularly when he begins to pontificate on a subject about which he knows next to nothing. There are other colours of note in the film, worn by characters only once each, so there is very little available for analysis for these colours. Orange is worn by Wally when we first see him as an indicator of his irascible temper. He is combative, he is argumentative, and he is totally in denial of his own blindness. Purple is worn by Adele in those same initial scenes. Here she is guiding and admonishing Wally for his lack of acceptance of the reality of his condition. Pink is also worn by Adele as an indicator of the risks she takes to her own safety for the love of her brother, and later on when she is helping them with their scheme to obtain residence within the resort. There is only one colour missing from this sequence of colours, and that is cyan. There is no real happiness in this film. There is no bliss. There is no ability to feel absolute and entire contentment. When we leave the film at the end, there are still challenges to be faced by these two people, Dave and Wally. So let's now summarise the colour analysis. Grey is by far the dominant colour. It's achroma, that is, it does not have any actual hue, and it mainly adheres to the men. It's a standard use for men, or for male characters, as an ordinary person. When women wear grey, it is generally to deceive within this film. Black is common. It's also part of the achroma, that is, no hue, and it denotes hidden motives and an ability to promote stability through those motives. White is similarly common. It also becomes part of the achroma range. Dave doesn't wear it, but it does indicate that the other people who do wear white are standing up to a risk that they must face. Blue adheres mainly to Dave and Wally, and it's all about their planning of strategy to obtain what they want, that is, their freedom, and also a declaration of their innocence. The police, who play very little role in the film, also are using strategy to attempt to arrest these two for a crime that they did not commit. Red is seen on Eve, Dave, and Sutherland, and it attracts attention as well as establish dominance. For green, it's only worn by Wally and Eve, and for both situations there is a fresh start needed, and they act to achieve this fresh start. Whether it's successful or not remains to be seen. Brown adheres to Wally, Kurgo, and the detectives, and it's a resistance to reality. For Wally, it's resistance to the reality of his blindness. For Kurgo, it's a resistance to the dominance of other people when he really wants more money. And for the detectives, it's a resistance to their inability to see the truth of the crime that was committed. For Yellow, we only see this for Wally, and that's when he is pretending to be competent in a skill that he really fails at quite miserably. All of the other colours aren't seen often enough to allow any form of analysis. And that brings us to the end of this colour analysis. Look, I truly hope that you are inspired now to seek out this particular film, because while it was not their most brilliant performance as a couple, both Wilder and Pryor really produce a lot of comic genius within the film. And if you accept it as a romp that is not meant to be serious, then I'm sure you will enjoy it. In the meantime, I wish that the colours of your life bring you all of the joy and happiness and success that you're looking for. Until next time, bye.